Welcome back to the show. We're now joined by Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who's an immigration attorney and the owner-CEO of Lincoln-Goldfinch Law in Austin, Texas. Kate, thanks for joining the show.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So much is happening in immigration policy. It's nice to have someone who can walk us through a little bit about this. And I wanted to start with this gold card plan. As soon as President Trump announced it, it blew up, obviously, on social media. And even people not on social media were clearly talking about it. Could you just say, like, what is this and how does it differ from existing programs that we have for high-income persons?
Sure. So it's not been, rolled out yet, of course. It was just one of these rather off-the-cuff remarks from the president that we will be launching a $5 million investors gold card, which will come with additional benefits, which were not delineated. No one really knows what that is. It's somewhat similar, although more extreme than to the EB-5 investors visa that we have, which requires somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million of investment into certain regions of the United States. And it is a program that is somewhat utilized. There's about around 8,000 visas granted per year, so way fewer than the administration has sort of surmised would apply for the gold card. And it's pretty rampant with some fraud and abuse. It's a problematic program.
Why do we have that program? Many people laughed when they heard or expressed shock when they heard Trump talk about this, but why do we have the existing one?
Well, it is a way to get, money invested into certain areas of the U.S. And at the numbers that we have coming in, it's around $80 million a year. And like I said, there's been some fraud and abuse, so it's a problematic program. But it's a, very small sliver of the immigration pie. And I think certainly even if a gold card were to actually occur, I think number one, it would need to go through Congress. It would require legislation to actually move through. I think the number of people who would actually apply and qualify and be willing to turn over $5 million would be a very small number. I don't think it would ultimately result in an infusion of that much cash into the economy whatsoever.
Why do you think, and I know that's always a lot to ask, but why does President Trump want to, or will you remove the job creation mandate from the EB-5 program for this? What's the goal of doing something like that?
Well, sometimes it's hard to get into his brain. Of course, I think probably we all see that Trump seems to prefer rich people and ultra wealthy people and non-rich people, and that actually contemplating what benefits the economy is not necessarily part of the equation. I mean, when you look at some of the other programs that he's canceled, TPS programs, certain parole programs, a lot of those programs just in filing fees bring in probably more money than a gold card would ultimately. And then, of course, there's the overall question of the economy, and that immigrants boost the economy, and really on all levels of the skill spectrum. You often hear people talk about, immigrants will only do the jobs that Americans don't want to do, picking strawberries in the field. And maybe that's true, but also immigrants on all levels of the skill spectrum up to innovation and tech really do boost the economy. And if we actually wanted to infuse the economy with money through immigration, we would expand lower level work visas and seasonal work visas and actually, create a way maybe for undocumented people to pay a fine and get legal status. There are ways that we could bring in so much money to the economy, not focusing on the ultra wealthy, which of course, immigrants who are not ultra wealthy bring as much, if not more benefit than wealthy immigrants.
So politically, he's changing this from a narrow, very targeted program to generate investment in certain areas of the economy to a pay-for-play to get citizenship and plus the benefits that he referenced kind of program. But he's also doing it, obviously, with the backdrop of deportations that are taking place. And so politically, you can see the problems that emerge from him saying this right now. Legally, are there problems if he actually tries to go through with this? Is this clear for him to do, or are there legal challenges he might face?
I think he'll definitely face legal challenges. A simple way to conceptualize presidential authority over immigration is that when there's a temporary status, the president has a lot of authority over it, like DACA, like parole programs, like temporary protected status, and a lot of the programs that we've already seen Trump flash. But when you start creeping into the realm of more permanent status, anything to do with a green card or citizen, certainly birthright citizenship, even asylum eligibility ultimately in the courts, a lot of that is controlled by the Immigration and Nationality Act, which of course is legislation that was passed by Congress. And in order for the executive to change a permanent structure of immigration, it would require congressional authority. And I don't anticipate that we would see something like a simple gold card provision sent through Congress without a lot of compromise coming in also. So it's interesting. I do think the gold card gained a lot of attention on social media. I don't ultimately think it will happen, or even if it does happen, be all that impactful one way or the other on our immigration system.
Do you think, it does raise this bigger question in terms of his challenging the congressional centrality in the Immigration Nationality Act, but just more broadly, it's come up with the citizenship, birthright citizenship. Do you think the legal system can withstand the president if he decides to continue moving forward with moving around Congress and moving around congressional decisions telling him to stop? As someone who's kind of in the law, how do you see this question of a potential constitutional crisis and the limits or non-limits of executive power at this point?
Well, I think that's the big monster that's bearing down on all of us right now, because the way that immigration policy has made, and that's been ramped up, is that the president issues executive orders that then get entangled in lawsuits, and federal judges will issue injunctions blocking orders. And we've seen that, with birthright citizenship, and of course, beyond just immigration policy, that's what's occurring as well. And the big question I think all of the, constitutional scholars have right now is what happens if the president decides to defy a federal court order, and if that occurs, it will be an unprecedented situation in our nation. And of course, the courts don't have an army; they don't have a way to enforce their rulings. And so, what do we all do then? And I don't think anyone knows the answer to that question.
And finally, you deal with this issue. You've dealt with it for a while on the ground with real clients, and the rest of us, not the rest of us, but many people just read articles about what's going on and hear stories of the deportation program. What's your sense from Austin of how deportation is playing out right now, not just in terms of the overall numbers, comparisons to Biden, Obama, and others, but what does this policy look like in the lives of those who are being targeted by ICE and others right now?
It's been horrific. I had a client pulled over with his wife and 3 little kids in the car. They were all U.S. citizens, and he was in the process of getting status. And the police officer, called 9 ICE agents to come and take him. And I had another case where a young man, a teenager, and his dad went to their ICE check-in, and they didn't come out. And I had to tell his mom he wasn't coming home, and she was upset about him missing his AP test the next day. There's just really very real things occurring, families being torn apart. And in my experience, none of the people who have been apprehended or rounded up actually have a criminal history. It's not a real basis for anything in the cases that I've seen. So the interior enforcement pressure is very, very real. And I had a meeting with some of the ICE leaders in my jurisdiction, and a question was asked of them about, for you all, what's the real difference? And what they said is we have ultimate discretion now. Before, we had to ask for permission to take serious actions, and now we can essentially do whatever we want. The leash has been taken off, and so we have a lot of these ICE agents around the country just doing whatever they want, and it's pretty horrific.
And I guess finally, what kind of legal recourse? Do they have access? Do most people have access, or do few people have access to legal counsel, or are they now just subject to the whims of ICE when you're pulled over? Like in the life of a real person, what do they do once they are confronted by ICE?
Well, the biggest piece of advice that I give to people is about the expedited removal change. And that says that anyone who's been in the country for less than 2 years at the decision of the officer in the moment can be subjected to fast-track deportation without a hearing, or, they can be gone within hours. But if they've been here for 2 years or longer, they get to ask for release on bond and go before a judge and fight their case. It's a very stark difference. So I tell people always have evidence of your time in the U.S. on you, saved in a folder. Take pictures of the documents in your phone. If you're afraid of returning to your country, tell the ICE officer that you want to seek asylum. So there's ways that people can assert their own rights and delay the process. And so the biggest message for me and advocates like me right now is to get that message out to the community, because in those moments when they're initially being processed, there's no one there to guide them.
Thanks to our guest, Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney in Austin, Texas. Thank you so much for talking about all of those issues and for all the work you do.